Okay, and now that we have got our Swarm cluster up and running, what we want to start to do is we want to start to deploy some applications on it. So I'm gonna first deploy like a really minimal example that's just Nginx behind a load balancer. And I do this because this is like sort of the path of least resistance I found in terms of troubleshooting. If I can deploy this, it means like things are basically okay. You know, the worker nodes are okay, the manager nodes are okay, everything is okay. If I can't deploy this, it means something weird has happened somewhere. It means there's a worker node down, there's a port that should be open that's not open, there's a port protocol that I'm not using that I should be using. Like something weird like that is happening, and you should probably contact a systems administrator if you're not the one who deals with any of that stuff. Okay, so this is called Docker Compose Swarm Minimal, and we are in this build Flask app Docker Swarm. All right, so we have two services here. The first one is Nginx. That's just a web server. If you remember earlier, it's a web server that runs on port 80, and you can use it for a lot of things, but mostly I use it to serve static HTML files and also to test all my Docker deployments, to, you know, because if I can't install Nginx, I have much bigger problems. So we have the Nginx service, we have our deploy keys, we want to deploy this only on a worker node. For this one, we just have one replicate, but I mean, we could increase this 2, 3, 4, a bazillion. You know, it depends on how many worker nodes you have and how big each one of those is. Our restart policy, our update, I'll go back up here, our update policy. And then we also have our proxy, and the proxy is just, it's a load balancer. So a load balancer is like an application that sits in front of your application and allows you to create like multiple instances. So for instance, I can have multiple instances of Nginx that are all running, and then I have a load balancer that sits in front of them. And then what that load balancer does is it kind of like takes each one of the requests and it says like, oh, okay, that machine doesn't have very many requests on it, go over there. Or, you know, go over to this worker node or go over to that worker node. So that is pretty much all that a load balancer does. For this one, I'm just gonna use the default Docker Cloud HAProxy. Later on, I'm going to also show some more examples, including like my favorite load balancer, which is Traffic. So just keep in mind, this is a really good way to just get started, because again, it's like sort of the, you know, it's testing out like just like the minimal. Can I get something working with absolutely just minimal configuration before I go and add all kinds of like fancy routes and stuff like that. So proxy image, this depends upon Nginx. I have the mode and the environment and the volumes, the ports. So Nginx runs on port 80, so that's what I want to use. And the default port for, okay, no, so I mixed that up. So this HAProxy, the Docker, you know, the Docker HAProxy runs on port 80, so that's what I am exposing. And then also up here, Nginx runs on port 80, and so that's what I have listed as the service ports. And the service ports are specifically for the HAProxy Docker image. All right, so once I have all of those, yep, here we go, and I want this one to be on the manager, so always make sure that your load balancer is on your manager node. So once we have that, this is docker stack deploy. Okay, so what I have here is I have docker stack deploy, and then I have -- compose file is the path to the compose file, which in this instance is docker compose swarm minimal.yaml, and I'm naming this prod, which is kind of a terrible name, but I'm kind of just bad at naming things. So I'm going to show you exactly what that looks like in a second, but the easiest way to describe it is if you think back to when we had our Docker Compose configurations and all of our service names were prefixed with the actual directory root with the base name of the directory, which was usually the same thing as our project name. It's just like that, and I'm going to show you that in a second. So I named this prod. Okay, and then this says creating service, updating service, because I ran through this whole thing before the video was running, obviously. So I created the service prod Nginx and then updated the service prod proxy. So you can see here, it looks very much like it did when we ran things with Compose. So the service name is Nginx, and then that gets prefixed by this name that we give it here called prod. Okay, and then I can do docker service ls. Okay, and then you can actually see, oh, wait. I had this running from earlier. I'm gonna kill it. And then I'm gonna show it later, don't worry. Okay, pretend that you didn't see that. Okay, docker service ls, I have the prod nginx, the prod proxy. Yep, there we go, we're all good. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm actually gonna go to the public IP address of this machine. And as you see, I see this welcome to Nginx, and this is pretty cool because this means that what is actually happening is that I have this service and it's running on a worker node. It's not even running on this node that I deployed it on. It's running on a different node. And then we are getting this load balancer in front of it that does all of the magical things. And we can do... Okay, so we can actually inspect our service. I mean, I hit enter so fast. Docker service inspect prod nginx -- pretty. That just means like make the output like more human readable. And then you can see, here's the ID, the name. If we have any labels for it, we could have added more labels. The service mode is replicated, meaning that we can have more than one instance. And what else? I mean, it's pretty much all the same things that we already saw up here. Okay, so it's all the same stuff that we saw up here, and then I think I went through that a little bit quickly. This is the public IP address of my manager node. So that's why this comes up like this. All right, and then that's it. That's it for this example. So definitely take this minimal example and try to deploy it somewhere. Because if you can't deploy this one, it probably means that there's something funky with your swarm node configuration. So that's a good thing to know. Check it out, because otherwise you don't know. Is it like, well, is it something wrong with my application? Is it something wrong with the nodes? I don't know. It could be anything. So this is just the way that I always start off. Is I always try to start off with like the least, the least complex deployment scenario possible, and then I will go and gradually add on the prettiness. So in the next one, we are actually going to take the Flask application that we made earlier, and we are going to deploy that as well. So I will see you in the next lesson. Thanks.